Hi everyone,
Hello.
and welcome to another amazing Supernal Magazine interview. I'm very blessed to be here today with the very beautiful, the wise and the gorgeous Cara Walker from Walker Family Funerals. Thank you for being here today, Cara.
Thanks, Freya, for having me.
Yay! So Cara is a funeral director, a doula, and a very wise woman. She's also a fairy in her wearing her other hat, and Cara has created this beautiful funeral service, funeral home, how do you call it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, now it's called a funeral home or funeral parlour because we replaced the home parlour, how people used to keep their deceased in the front of their home, and then they replicated that and made a business out of it. So that's where the words come from.
Okay, so a beautiful funeral directory service and parlour. And I've had the very recent privilege of working with her with the passing of my beautiful mumsy, and that's how we come to be here today. We're here today to talk about the topic of rethinking funerals. So, Cara, would you like to open with a little bit about why it is that you created Walker Family Funerals? What the need was in Western Australia that you were hearing from people, and how it all evolved?
For sure. It was definitely from a yearning. I've often seen spaces that needed to be filled and wishing that someone would just do that role. And as a funeral celebrant, I was at the mercy of the funeral directors who would come in with their own agenda, their own timeline, and their own monetary scale of what they would charge for these funerals. And what people received was a business deal with not much integrity and heart put into it. And particularly when I came from, Freya mentioned I'm a fairy. I've worked as a fairy in the community of Perth for over 30 years. So my opening into the world of funerals was mainly with children. And these people who had lost a child are usually single income families. And when you are in a state of trauma and great loss of losing a child, you aren't thinking clearly. And this is the prime time to be taken advantage of for overcharging, being told you need to have all of these things, and forgetting about the purpose of a funeral is to honour the life and to step into your grief in a supported space. And I just did not see that happening. So I needed to open up the funeral home because I was continually heartbroken by the industry, which unfortunately it is. It's a 2.4 at least now, I think even bigger dollar industry in Australia, and there's a reason for that. And this
is that billion or trillion?
It's billion, but
right.
I imagine it's a bit more. I think those stats were a couple of years ago. But this is a reclaiming of space, and it's a reclaiming of what should be a heart space. And I can't imagine a more important time to stand with people. So this is why I'm here.
Beautiful. Funerals in the past were run quite differently than they are now, as you've mentioned. So in saying that, what do you feel that we have lost in the last generations, and what do you feel it is that we're remembering?
So I feel that what we have lost is that death used to be what we worked with as a norm. People would die within their homes often, and the close family members and the neighbours would come and they would pull in at this time. They would wash their loved ones, they would keep them at their home for whatever time was needed to organise the church or the ceremony on the digging of the grave. The neighbours would dig the grave, people would carry the coffin themselves, the coffin would be built themselves. Every step was done within community, with love, because it was just what needed to be done. Now, for many reasons, if you look into the death study, things like war, like we needed to preserve bodies to get them home. Because of different things that were happening in the world, we had to come up with a way to preserve bodies. And that came up, we've talked before in your beautiful talk about Mumsy that you did the Egyptian emotional clearing technique. The Egyptians were incredible with their work with death, and we know the preservation of mummies is beyond far what we can understand and do now. But now we just use chemicals, and that system is a specialist role. I don't naturally use chemicals for my bodies. I don't recommend it. However, there are certain circumstances which we don't need to go into. All of these roles have become part of this industry that we're talking about. And I feel like that is what has been lost, is our doing and our hands-on technique.
So are you saying, just I'm sorry, curiosity, going back to the chemicals just very briefly.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that, if I'm understanding you correctly, in the larger, the very large multinational funeral homes, chemicals are used as a norm
100%.
in every situation. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is, in your case, you use them only if absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Right.
It is.
That's nice. I like that a lot.
It is a norm. It is a normal to, because it's something that they could charge for. You know, they're holding that role, a mortician to do that role for them. For us, unless it's needed, and sometimes it is needed, I'm not going to say there's not a place for the embalming process, because there absolutely is. It's just not needed all the time and not needed most of the time. We can use natural body preservation techniques and work with cold, work with different modalities to keep that body in a dignified state. We want them to be dignified and laying and looking like they're laying in peace, so that when their loved ones come through, they look at them and say, they're a beautiful loved one, which I recognise and I know, but they're no longer in there, and I can let go. But even in that preparation state, to get them from when someone dies to a state of laying of rest, you can be part of that process. And this is the thing that is lost, is we can stand with you as a death walker and be with you at home to guide you through those stages. And there are stages which, if you get your hands on, even if it's as small as standing by the side or coming in and placing your hands on them or just seeing them, there's something in your consciousness that goes, hang on, they've gone, they're no longer there, and you can let go. Because when you don't see that state, there is often a part in our psyche that just feels that they might be missing and that they're somewhere, and grief can last longer. But having that hands-on experience, I have found in my experience, really helps someone move through their grief in a much more significantly faster way.
Yeah, I would like to just reflect, a couple of things Cara has said there, in that in my mum's process, one of the main things that she was concerned about was that her dignity would be cared for. Mm-hmm. And that was profoundly important to her, and in the way that, Cara, you describe it, it's a profound importance to you, and it's a profound importance to the loved ones around. So it was a beautiful experience. You describe grief as love. Mm-hmm. But not love as it was before, and about it needing to have a new place to go. And how is it that ritual and ceremony connect with and help that process?
Yeah, so I do think that grief is love. It's a painful love. It's the price of loving. That loss that we feel is we just want to keep loving that person how we've known them to be, and we don't know where to put it. And creating ceremony and ritual channels our love into a place of not only supporting that person in their ascension and onwards, and whatever your belief system, whether that is Christian or, spiritual or Buddhist, sitting with somebody through their body when they're laying in that between state really helps you put your love into them and lets you let them go. And I think this is a big part of what is lost in our grief and our process of death in the community, of being okay to sit with death. It is not comfortable. It's never going to be comfortable. You don't want to be best friends with death. It is the last stage of somebody, letting go of how we've known them. But we need to normalise it. We need to normalise it, that it's okay for us and it is normal for us to love our family members and our partners and our children, even when they have passed, rather than giving that to somebody else and sitting 10 metres away from them while they're sealed in a box. From your loved one, sitting 10 metres away in a cold chapel space, for me personally, that does not make sense. And it has become a norm for some people, and they would be more comfortable in processing their grief that way, and that is okay. And there's a lot of funeral directors that support that. But I know myself and my community want to be hands-on. We want to hold the hands of our loved ones. We want the opportunity to maybe wash them. We want to see that they're okay. I want to know that they're taken care of every step of the way with dignity and respect. And that's what we're asking of the new generation of funeral directors now. Let's bring back more of working together rather than I'm paying you to do a job to take them away and deal with that problem.
May I share something personal briefly? So about 20-ish years ago, a little longer actually, my younger brother passed away. And he passed away by taking his own life. And when you spoke about, being 10 metres away behind a thick wall of glass, that was the way that I had to see my brother, because someone in our family had to go and identify his body. And I can tell you that a sound escaped my mouth that I had no idea could come out of me. I chose to take on that role to protect my mum. I didn't want her to remember him that way. And it took me years and years and years to be able to move past that traumatic moment. And the most trauma of that moment was that I was not allowed to touch him. No matter what the state of him, I wasn't allowed to touch him. The pain of being separated from him, even in whatever state he was in, is what stays with me. You can see I'm emotional even now, even after 20-something years.
Yes.
And it was dehumanising. It was dehumanising. So I wish to share that. I hadn't even thought about that coming up in this interview, to be quite honest. So, so I could definitely concur, and I'm sure there are countless other people out there who've been in similar situations and who may not have even have recognised that feeling or emotion, or been able to identify exactly what that even was.
Absolutely. There's something very raw that happens, especially when there is a shock of loss. And I think you're right, there is, a great cry and longing and those sounds. It's a few people have mentioned that when they've got the knock on the door, and what came out of them was quite a shock. And I don't think nothing could prepare you for that. And that role, I imagine that was at the coroner and it was under investigation, so they couldn't touch.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we could do so much more to support families. And what a cold system, I understand it's an investigation at that point, but like you said, you hold on to that for life.
Yeah.
It's the most, everybody that you have seen, you remember for life. It's a significant moment for everybody.
Yeah. Yes, and with no offer for counselling, no offer for support, nothing. You're right. The system, as it stood and currently stands in many aspects, is cold, heartless and inhumane. Cara, as public views shift and funerals are becoming more personal and less prescribed, what have you witnessed that shows how deeply ceremony can be when we let go of the rules?
I love this. I love talking with families, and they're saying, we didn't we didn't want all the stuff, you know. There's a system that you go and you sit in the chapel space, and then, you know, there is an order of service that we know. And when I say, do you know that you don't need to put on the show? You don't need to do that. We can get your loved one, we can go to their community hall they're part of, and we can make some cups of tea and have cake. And that is ritual in itself. To sit around in a normal environment that you feel comfortable with a coffin, so they're part of the room, with no funeral director looking at the time, and holding space and that time with them. That is ceremony enough for some people. And I think if we take away from the standard system of what we know and what is significant to the unique person, you know, if they were an artist, let's bring out their artwork and celebrate that colour and what they created. If they were into football, let's go to their club of where they spent so much time in that community. If they were deeply spiritual, let's bring out all of the things that they prayed to and they honoured and drop into that space with them as we transcend through that moment. There are so many different ways that we can really honour an individual person that would not be written up on a funeral director's website of what would be offered in their packages. You know? So I think the reclaiming of this space and ceremony isn't, you know, a standard ritual. It's about who was that person. Let's make this about that person.
Let's make it about them.
You know?
Yes, I've been to a number of funerals, and you rushed through, and there's another crowd coming in behind. It's there isn't. It's a hurried process that has to stick to a rigid timeline, and
you have 1 hour. That whole lifetime had the ceremony. You have 1 hour, and while you are moved through to the lounge, the next funeral is moving through the front door. This is West Australia. Everyone here is, everyone, all the chapels here are run by the government, and it is so heartbreaking to be pushing people out the door because they've chosen that chapel because that's where they've always gone. But we have 1 hour to honour a whole lifetime, get them out the door, so the next one can move in. My goodness.
It's intense.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It should not be rushed.
Yeah, and actually I'm just also going to say that was one of the most extraordinary graces with the passing of my mum, was somewhere in my being, this voice appeared and said, I'm going to need a month. And not just a month, I would call that a moon cycle.
Yeah.
And a moon cycle is a cycle of reflection, and it's a full process within the moon within the solar year. And I knew that my soul knew that I would need that, and almost to the day, from the point that my mum chose to that she was going to leave her body, past her celebration of life, otherwise known as funeral service, occurred, that Cara emceed so brilliantly. And then her ashes were placed in the ocean as her request. It was 1 month. Not planned, it just happened. And so it's really interesting, you know, time was what I needed to reflect, to be with, and so on. And I'm sure, you know, that process I cannot tell you, people at home listening, and Cara, how much that has helped me heal. I thought I'd never be able to do this in this shorter time, within, you know, a 3-month window of my mum leaving her body. When I think about the passing of my younger brother, and I think about the passing of my father, it took me a much longer time. And of course their funerals were run by multinationals. So it made a huge difference, that time and space, and the care and the personalisation of things has rapidly improved the healing process on numerous levels. Not all levels, but on numerous levels. Yeah. So Cara, what body what role does the body play in assisting with the grief process, like the connection with the body, especially for children and youths?
Yeah, so my opinion is that children straight up can handle death a lot more than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of including children in all walks of life. My children have my experience, my very dear chosen sister, her mum was surviving cancer for 5 years and then she was going to die at home. I was homeschooling with my kids, sharing a farm property with another family. It was their grandmother. And we were there every day with her, and it was the most wonderful experience for my children. They would lay on her, and I remember my son giving her, but we talked through every part. He gave her a picture. And she said, "Oh, is this me with my angel wings?" He said, "No, that's you on fire when we burn you." You know, I was like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know." So that you know, he completely conceptualized what was going to happen. They were there, you know. They saw her body and they saw her being adorned. They saw her being laid into the coffin. They came and sat with everyone when they were crying from their own hearts with absolute heartbreak. And they were there for every moment. What we have to be okay with is children being around in that, and they're going to have a reaction. Sometimes we want to hush children and not hear their reaction, but we need to be okay with sitting with their reaction as much as we are with sitting with an adult's reaction, and that will come out in different ways. But that same sense of they're just missing or they're gone happens for children if we don't include them in that service. And this is what I believe pets are for in our life. They are there for us to love, to show compassion and the importance of nurturing. And also when they die, because their life cycle is a lot shorter than ours, it is a golden opportunity to walk through honouring their bodies and ceremony and ritual. And when we demonstrate that to children through the loss of their animals, when the big ones happen, when our grandparents pass, they are so much more prepared of what to expect.
Yeah.
They've seen the ritual, they've seen the ceremony, they go, "Oh, okay, this is what we do." And it helps so much. It really does. And you can play that with, you know, finding a deceased bird, you know, with your child and doing the same part. But I do believe that children should be welcome into the sanctity of ceremonies around death. And, you know, I was at a service last week and this beautiful grandmother had a whole bunch of children, and her direct children asked me to say at the start of the ceremony, as parents, if your kids make noise during this service and are running around, they are welcome. They are children. That's what she would have wanted. That's how she lived and that's how she died. She believed in the normalcy of death. And please don't feel you have to walk off and hush your children. They are welcome in this space. Let them make noise. It's part of life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So sustainable death care is something that's often framed environmentally, but you speak about it emotionally and mentally. Can you share a bit more about that?
It does. So sustainability is my heart language. You know, you've talked to me being a fairy. I'm an eco-fairy. I've taught children about sustainability through being a fairy for over 30 years. So bringing in environmental parts of this into the service is just natural. I just think that we should always be thinking environmentally, and the way that we offer our body in our final return to the earth should be a gift and a return back. And you'll see in another article I've written about voluntary assisted dying. In another article I've written about our natural organic reduction, human body composting, which I'm very passionate about bringing into play here. But sustainability is so much more than the environment. Sustainability is about connection and community, and looking at our death in a sustainable way means how are we supporting ourselves emotionally, spiritually, physically, and in our connection to nature and the earth. And this is what we need to bring in together as a community to feel that we are significantly contributing to a way to move forward, because our grief and the way we care for the earth and the way that we honour our loved ones are all very important, and they can be taken care of with as much integrity together. And I do think it's the same braid woven together. You know, the way that we care for a loved one as naturally as possible is a dedication of love. The way that their body is prepared as naturally as possible is our belief in supporting the earth. Everything that we're doing is significant. Everything that
leaves a legacy, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And these final wishes, you know, they're final. And, you know, if you can curate what you want your body to do, I think a lot of people want to return to the earth. We know that we've got this borrowed energy and we've taken so much energy to run this body. To return it to the earth closes that cycle, you know, and the way that my body can be returned to the earth, I need it to be as least toxic as possible.
Yeah.
I need it to be, you know, hopefully nourishing the plants and the trees. So this is why we're bringing in the natural organic reduction, because burning my body at 1200 degrees for an hour and a half uses a significant amount of energy. And the product of that is ash, which is quite toxic. If I'm putting it on my favourite tree, will likely poison the tree. So these final gifts, what do we do? Are we buried? Because in Perth, every coffin by law is lined in plastic. So we're not actually part of the environment. We break down and are sitting in a plastic wrapping. You know, I'm really confused about the death care and the laws that are around us that we have to choose from. The steps that I can do, which seem really small, are the best that I can do right now with what I'm given to be as sustainable as possible, with love and devotion to body, to spirit, to care for my loved one and to the earth as well.
A huge amount of focus has been put upon the care, gestation care, and then birth care, and then, you know, and it seems to me that death, the way that the body is processed, I'm going to say, because it's processed, is almost like an afterthought.
It is. Well, if we want to get down to a very basic, hard to talk about word, it is a waste problem.
Yeah.
You know, what do we do with waste in Australia? We bury it or we burn it. There are two major things, and that's our two options that are available for us right now. So in Tasmania, we have water cremation. You know, I believe in earth cremation. But in Western Australia, it is a waste problem. We have a body which we can't have in the community anymore. In nature, if a bird dies in this park right now, it will go to the earth, the ants will eat it, it will return to the earth. Our human problem is a waste problem, and we need to solve it. So if we bring out the spirit and the core of grief and all these things that we're feeling, what the government needs to do is deal with the waste problem. So we burn it or we bury it, and we can't bury it in a way that leaches toxicity into the water system, so we line that coffin with plastic. So if we get down to the very raw side of it, there's really not much love, thought put into the process.
And if I may be so bold as to offer the ideological issue I'm hearing you express it's what's in the space that you haven't said really, is that we as humans see ourselves and have constructed a system, or acquiesced to a system that has been constructed for us, that separates us from nature. That we are not part of that, and that our physiological, biological processes are different to that of the rest of the animals, insects, etc., etc. And so there is no place for us within that, which is what it would have been at one time.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've lost. We talk about things that we've lost, but that's a major thing we've lost, is our deep connection and seeing, and not just seeing, but knowing ourselves as intrinsic part of the whole of nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so a couple more questions, Cara.
Sure.
All right, end of life planning. It allows people to shape their own farewell. What changes when someone has an active role in their final rites?
I love this. You know, becoming a funeral director, I didn't really think about what I would feel going into someone who gets to curate their end of life, because voluntary assisted dying is relatively new in the community now. And this is something I've been invited to more and more, where someone has a timeline of their choice. And they come into me sometimes at the very end days, where we've got days, and they're quickly putting it together, and we're fighting doctors to get the final signatories to allow them to die in their wishes. Some people walk into my office, one man stands out to me literally off his work site in his tradie gear on the phone. Yeah, mate, you're going to have to get the rigging set up yourself next week. Guess where I am? With his wife in the office, telling her not to park the car, just slow down and he'll go get it done. And oh my goodness. And I remember the shock of hearing that. And the next time I saw him, I was picking him up to go into my mortuary cold accommodation. So personally, it's quite a change, to get your head around meeting someone who's very alive and working with them to their death. And then it's become such a beautiful process, because we can, what we've talked about with you, curate every part of their final days. And it is such a gift, because who usually gets to do that? Most people don't.
No.
And the fine details down to what they're going to wear, this music that they want around them, the people they want, the smells, their final memories, even the last days building to that, curating what are going to be the best memories for the people that are left behind. And they walk so much more boldly and confidently towards that. So when they look that doctor in the eye, holding that injection, it's a yes, I'm ready, let's do this. And it continues to blow me away. It continues to feel like such an honour to be able to witness such integrity, because you have got that time. And the curation of it is purely because we are blessed with that, with voluntary assisted dying. And what is significant for us to know is that the people who have VAD aren't choosing to die. Death has chosen them. They have no choice in this. What has happened is that they get the chance to claim something back, because so much of them gets taken from them. Often their dignity, often their choice of how they're treated. Doctors are throwing them around with different ideas. They've been fighting for so much that they can claim their time in their location and exactly how that looks. And that is so important to them. And I just can't thank everyone who has fought for this to come into play in Australia. It really has made such a difference for so many people. Yeah, it really is so special.
Yeah, and that is a massive change to the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, and with having a funeral that steps outside of the current norms,
yeah,
fear can arise. So how is it that you work with people to work through those processes?
Yeah, I think, our fear of our mortality is our deepest fear. Or even, you have covered the daughter wound. Like growing up, I remember thinking of my parents dying and just crying. It's our biggest fear, is that, our closest ones are going to die. And the truth is that it is our loved ones are going to die. Working with someone who is lined up for voluntary assisted dying, I have found everyone being extremely supportive. It is a conversation around this is what they want, and I have found that the people closest to them are celebrating their wishes, because they are part of the conversation and they have seen the struggle and the pain that they have gone through. I have heard of people being upset because they weren't included in that conversation, and they suddenly found out that they had gone ahead and done that, and it was done without them knowing. So I think if anyone is looking to do that, conversation is important, and really looking at it from
where time's possible.
Exactly, yeah. And looking at it from the person who has made that choice perspective. I think that's really important, because we don't want to lose our people. We don't want to lose them and the way that we know them, but understanding that they are in pain and they want dignity for that last part. And if you've watched someone in active dying process, and a lot of these people have, they're saying, no, I don't want that for myself, and I don't want you to see me that way. It is sometimes a gift to their loved ones. And that was that man that came in that I talked about in his tradies out he said, I don't want my wife sitting there watching me gasping for my last breath. Let's do this now while I can make this choice. I've had enough. I don't want her to see it. I'm making this choice. And he had such pride in that, and I celebrate that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it is. And also, from my mumsy's perspective, it gave her back her choice and empowerment. It was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to happen in a cold clinical environment. It didn't need to occur in a clinical environment with fluorescent lights and so on and so forth. There's so many pluses, and it just gives empowerment back to the individual to do everything on their own terms.
They do.
Yeah.
There's something which has become popular, for which we have had the joy to participate in, is what's called a living funeral. So when you have a timeline, rather than putting on this event where we say the speeches and put on a photo tribute for that one and they're passed away in a box, why don't we have it with that person? And we have a living funeral with them, and I have a throne which I put out the front, and the person sits up there, and the people make the speeches with them sitting next to them, and they watch their own photo tribute played. They share food, and it is an event filled with so much heartbreak and tears and laughter. And once that party is done, everyone goes, now I'm ready. They've said their goodbyes, and it is so beautiful. It seems so simple, but it's such a significantly different way to flip the coin and go, why are we celebrating them after? We've got a timeline. They're going to be passed away in a month's time. Let's have the party now.
Yeah.
You're invited.
Yeah. And that was kind of, we expected, the expectation or the thought was that my mum would be well again, and not that everything would flip on its head in such a short space of time. And there was always the thought that we would have a celebration of life party for her before doing such a thing. So I can completely see how extraordinary that would be, and amazing for that person to witness their own celebration of life, their own journey in film, in pictures, and with everyone around them. Magnificent.
It's fun.
So when we, Cara, hear about taking funerals from being conventional to, you speak about them becoming slower, less fast-paced, and deeply personal. How do you perceive that affects the grieving process?
It could, yeah. So I really believe in slowing everything down. I think we're in a rushed world, and when you've gone through grief, everything seems warped. You look around and you think, why is everyone going about their way? Don't you know that they have died? Your mind works differently. Your timeline stretches, and a funeral director saying you've got 1 hour, you move in and you move out. People would often forget that whole funeral service because their brains are still trying to get around the shock and the trauma, and we've got this 1 hour and it's over and done with. But if you can say, we're going to drop into this space and we're going to honour them the way that they were, whichever way we've talked about, we've discussed, it allows someone to let the world go for a moment and drop into that space. And it gives them time to get there, to arrive, to overcome the shock of the fact that I'm here at my loved one's funeral, and actually participate in a complete way. Because sometimes that takes hours to really drop into that. It's, everyone comes in and wants to hug them and say hello, and then the music's playing. And what about if we just give someone space and time? And what that does for their grief is it gives the grief time to really sit with the person and what's happening going on, because shock and trauma is going to be happening in a quick circumstance, but we can support that person's deeper grief through just taking away that time schedule.
In your article, you mentioned that grief itself can cause the mind to play tricks.
I do. So.
Now, you know, when I read that, that struck a chord with me, because even with the closeness of experience that I had with my mum, with my mumsy, with the preparation of her passing, curating her funeral with you and her together, and facilitating all of the things that I did, there was still a moment where I was with someone and was like, I need to go. There was a moment where I need to go back to Mum's, and in my mind, Mum was there.
Yeah.
Even though I was there, even though I saw her pass, that's a major, you know, that's a major thing for people.
It's so common. Yeah.
And I would imagine that that's something that in conventional situations would be far greater experience for people than when there's more intimacy in the process.
Yeah, I think so. And I often hear people saying, "Oh, I just keep going to message them to ask them, you know, what was that song that you wanted again? You know, what was that? You know, where's that photo gone that you said you would like to be placed up there?" And these, you know, a lot of this, I believe, is a really important reminder, is to talk about death before we're at need. Because even when you know that it's about to happen, then you're in an emergency. Oh my goodness, okay, we've got to quickly do the things, and things get forgotten. If it is a common conversation and you're saying, you know, when I die, you know, I want to be wrapped in this cloth, and I want my family to put on this dance music, and I want everyone to dance around, you know, and people's like, haha, you know, it's laughing and it's funny and it's like humoured. Oh my God, that's actually going to happen one day. But you do bookmark that in your mind. And when the time comes, not only do you know what to do, that is a gift from the loved one, because you want nothing more than to give exactly what they would have wanted.
Yeah.
And they have told you that. And having that conversation takes that pressure off them of thinking, how am I doing this right? Are you okay with this? And second guessing. Have those conversations, open it up, normalise every single part. What do you want to wear? What music's played? Where do you want to go? Who can be there? If you don't want someone there, do you want to write a letter that's read out saying your truth? There are so many different things that you can do. Has been done a few times. You stand there going, ooh.
I have a friend of mine, she's full of life, and she said to me the other day, she goes, "Oh, I've got my whole funeral planned."
Love it.
She said, "I'm going to be cremated." Well, she doesn't know that composting is available, hopefully, in the near future, but that may change. But she was like, "I literally wish to go up in fireworks."
Love, yep, can be
so
done.
I was like, that's extraordinary. So she's like, yeah, that's all planned. I'm having a party, you know, before I go, there'll be no wallowing in it, etc., etc. But I just thought, how wonderful. This person's full of life, they're in life, they're living life, and they know how they want to go out.
Yeah.
And it's very clear, and it's very normal for them already to be talking about that. So, you know, yeah, really amazing stuff, Cara. Thank you so much for all of the incredible work that you do. Thank you for sharing with community. Thank you for advocating for us, and the earth and the elemental beings and all involved, so that we can have human composting available to us in the not too distant future. Everybody, please do jump online and look at Cara's article on that process, and sign the petition that we can give back more than ever before. Yeah, amazing, Cara. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.